Ask one question quick. We all know this group started with the NB Power, the protest against NB Power and all that. Do you have an opinion the way the government is handling this fracking, the issue of fracking? Do you have an opinion on this?
Well, in terms of process, it appears that a similar process is maybe being followed by this government. They have indicated on numerous occasions that there's no compelling evidence that fracking is harmful for communities, their wells, and the quality of life. They've made a decision, and they have held public meetings, which was different than NB Power, but they're very strong on their position, and I guess it's going to be determined in the near future as to whether or not they're listening. To New Brunswick.
And we have two provinces, if I remember correctly, Quebec and Nova Scotia, so they will have come down against this. Yeah. And they must have reasons to have come down against it. So again, it's a matter of viable information. Yeah. You can only judge projects, you can only judge policy if you have a viable information. Information is really this, based on fact, and if it's not factual, then it's rumor. And you cannot run a government or you cannot run a democracy if you do saying, well, we don't know, we have no idea. And so you have, if you're going to go forward with something that could be harmful or benefit or be a benefit to people, you have to have the hard facts.
What was unfortunate on Monday at the rally at the Legislative Assembly was
no PCMLAs.
Not a single PCMLA was present. Yet, while they were in opposition, they were flooding our rallies for attention, and that sounds like politics as usual, for the government party to avoid coming out and meeting.
But maybe it was a breakdown in communication, no?
Well, you're being kind, but I don't feel it was.
Justement, c'était de ça que je voulais parler. Just to be fair, I would want to mention that when there was a meeting that was held by the government at the Fredericton Inn, both Minister Blaney and Minister
Northrop
were present and spoke with the people.
Yeah.
Although they were kind of ambushed and they were kind of they were sort of not in a very pleasant environment. But what happened at that time and at several occasions after that is that Minister Northrop said that the decision would go to the owner. However, owners are side by side and very often share the same water table. And there was a lady who told me that there was fracking happening on her land, and that at the time she thought that it would be the bonanza that they announced, but it wasn't, and it had divided the community. Because I don't know where the government is in its logic, but they don't seem to have addressed all the problems that may ensue if you are going to say, okay, each owner has the right to dispose of his land or her land as is or as he or she pleases. It might have repercussion on other people around. So
in Brunswick, you only own the top of the land. You don't own underneath. Right? See, that's one of the problems we have. For example, to change the subject very quickly, we have no right to the sun. In other words, if I build a house with solar panels and somebody plants trees, or builds a 20-foot, I can't say, no, you can't do that. And there's a lot of stuff certainly, but for the fracking, I think there's been a video done showing some of the results down stateside. I only saw, unfortunately, the end of it one night when I came home. There is information. If the video is not valid, si l'information n'est pas correcte, si l'information n'est pas bonne, pourquoi qu'à un moment donné que le gouvernement, avec tous les ressources qu'il y a, ne peut pas faire une recherche, puis arrive à dire non, ça c'est pas correct, ça c'est correct, etc. Faut prendre des décisions sur des choses factuelles. Puis plus qu'on avance, je veux dire, plus qu'on a du high-tech, si tu veux, puis il n'y a pas quelque chose qui arrive Because I'm not sure it was all competent about.
The problem is that the government seems to be saying to people, you're having this position because you don't know what you're talking about. That's basically what they're telling them. It was the same discourse during the NB Power deal. So if people just say no, we know what it is, we know the level of risk, but we just don't want it. Is the government going to listen? I leave that to you to answer.
That's right, and you know, the point that you're making in your question, Philip, about, you know, the government saying it's up to the landowner. I mean, that is really a copy. When you think of, is it up to the landowner to decide how much they're going to pollute the air with carcinogenics and greenhouse gas emissions? Is it up to the landowner to decide that? We believe that the government has a moral responsibility to the people of this province to ensure that its environment is well protected. Thank you. And that there's a not only is it well protected, but there's policies that are put in place out front. Because in your question, you've identified that there was a number of issues that have been brought forward. The government, if they're convinced of this as an economic development tool, if they're convinced that this is a good thing, it would seem to us that they would say, okay, with these 5 issues that you brought up, this is our reaction to those 5 issues. Rather than, you know, feeling ambushed at these meetings, they have a way to disseminate information that they promised us that they'd be using social media, that they'd be using their web page, they'd be using, and that hasn't been developed yet. And we're seeing then what kind of awkward situations and trouble politicians can get into, even though they said that they would do new things. The fact is that these issues are going to be ongoing. We're going to have a continuation of new issues that are going to be very challenging for our environment.
Yeah, we don't live in a static society.
And our whole ambition is that they come and give information so that New Brunswickers can decide. And if they're not happy with their government, they have ways of showing that. You know, to call 1,500 people out on a statutory hot Monday holiday in New Brunswick, that's substantial. New Brunswickers are engaged in the politics. And, you know, we want to make sure that our politicians are engaged in that political discussion as well.
And the union wasn't involved in this. The union wasn't involved in this protest. So this was ordinary New Brunswickers.
This is grassroots New Brunswickers.
Joe and Philip and Philippine, you know.
And that are coming out, and we're really encouraged by the fact that people are following that lead. That if the government is not being responsive, you know, and this isn't new. You know, prior to NB Power, there were 4 other major issues where the then government, the Liberal government, flip-flopped on election promises, and they heard about it. You know, we sometimes forget about the ferries. We sometimes forget about the Polytechnique, you know, the merging of community colleges with universities. They drew huge crowds in communities. So, you know, the New Brunswickers are engaged. And what we're trying to do is nudge our politicians to say, hey, get with it, or you're going to face some consequences that aren't particularly attractive to you.